Hey, this is John Young. Tonight we're going to be doing our very first DJ Industry Spotlight, and I've got a guest of Howard Walstein with me tonight. Now, the original show was live streamed at 7 o'clock Central Time on Monday night, but we had such a terrible connection with Restream we had to record it, and I didn't get the very beginning of it. So we're going to jump right into it. We just did our little intro. Howard's based out of the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and he's been doing things since 1982. Started out with Total Entertainment and then moved on to Kids Dance. And then we can kind of jump into our show with Howard tonight. And yeah, thank you guys for watching.
Elaborate, where we got in touch with all the record reps, and I knew all of them by name. And I don't think I had to buy records for years, you know. And then I went from that to Roller Garden. I was working a day job, and I realized that I could make almost the same kind of money just DJing at Roller Garden, which is a roller skating rink, probably one of the largest in the Twin Cities. And then I worked for a multi-op for about a year to see what I needed to do in order to really make the dive. And I started Total Entertainment in 1982. And then in 1998, with thought of going to Mobile Beat, I kind of came up with this idea of something called Kids Dance. And one of the things I found when I went to Mobile Beat is we have all these DJ companies, and a lot of the brides couldn't remember who their DJ was because we had all these names, like they're very generic type names, like Ultimate Entertainment. I mean, we were trying to sound cool. Total Entertainment we thought was cool at the time.
Sure.
But Kids Dance kind of said what we did. And the irony about it was I started marketing as Kids Dance. That was my background, was advertising. So I thought, you know, let's try to sell this like a pair of Adidas or Nikes. So I started sending out postcards or flyers to places like the Taste of Minnesota, and they said, "Oh, you know, it's so good that you're in town." I advertised it as America's interactive DJ for kids.
Yes.
And even though I had sent information to them before, somehow that rang a bell with them. It's like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're in town," and that's kind of where it took off, you know.
So so that gives you, it's kind of the 3,000 or the 30,000 foot overview. You mentioned that you started out playing music at the Bar Mitzvah World, and you were 12 years old, 11, 10. How old were you when you basically were the first time on stage there? You think?
You know, the first house parties, I was probably 13. I had just on Bar Mitzvah, and I'm playing for my older sister. We do a lot of bar mitzvahs, but it's nothing like we do now, or even 20 or 30 years ago. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary as Total Entertainment next year, and our shows are so much more elaborate than they ever used to be. So I think 17 was when I started doing like really where people were paying me for parties. You know, for junior high school parties.
Yeah. So were you a musician then? What, or were you just a music person who loved to collect music, or what at that young age got you in that?
You know, I thought about this. Nobody that I know of in the DJ business ever went into business to make money. We didn't go in and say, okay, I'm going to make lots of money. I'm going to be a DJ. What we did was we wanted attention. I wanted attention. I wasn't, I played trumpet, but I mean, I wasn't good. But what I found was it was kind of addicting, because when you start playing music and they're responding, it's like, you know what works and what doesn't work, and you get really good at it. And I find that the more shows you do, obviously you have a knack that other people don't have. You know, I think it kind of starts out with the concept, John, of, you know, when you're a kid, you go, oh, let me play this record for you. Have you ever heard this song? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that kind of, you know, it's like you have that love for music.
Who inspired your love for music? Is that something that came from friends, a parent, older sibling? Who would you say?
Well, I was very impressed with some of the local bands. When I entered DJ Dum, it's funny because my first flyers or my first phone calls, I had to explain to them why you'd want a DJ over a band. But I thought the bands were fantastic, or else they were not. I mean,
Hmm.
some of them were like kind of creepy. They kind of played polka-fied versions of top 40 stuff.
Yes, I
But
remember those.
yeah. So, I mean, everything sounded like polka, even though they were trying to play Footloose, you know? My sister probably influenced me a lot simply because, well, and my parents as well. My mom got a job at Target, and she was a secretary at Target. When she first started at Target, there were 4 Target stores across the country. So there were basically 4 Target stores in the Twin Cities. By the time she left Target, there were probably 5,000 stores.
Hmm.
And she started working in the record department and books and records. And before you know it, she had a pretty good in um, with Columbia Records and RCA Records. In fact, that's kind of my journey. Was my mom kind of said, "Hey, look at what my son has this sound system. Why doesn't he come and promote the new John Cougar Mellencamp album for RCA?" And I do that type of stuff. And I mean, for a fluke, I mean, I didn't know that that was going to be so cool. I didn't even think about how cool that was compared to what everyone else was doing. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
When did
So
when did as you're doing these things, when did it kind of come to the point that you, like, hey, this is going to be I can make this a career? I mean, because you've been doing this since 1982 as at that level, or, you know,
yeah.
but I mean, was it in the early 80s, or is it something earlier? You're like, hey, I think I can do this.
Well, you know, a lot of things that inspire you are the things that you notice that people are doing wrong or they're not happy about. My dad he just hated his job. And he had 2 or 3 fields that he went into. He'd quit one field and go back to another, cutting meat, selling insurance and whatever. And I always thought if I could find something that I really love to do, I love to work. And he worked hard. And I thought, well, if I can work hard at that, I noticed that a lot of people kind of discounted what I did. It's the
Hmm.
type of thing where, oh, you know, why don't you come and we'll give you free drinks or whatever. But um, quite honestly, it was starting to work, and you make a splash on the scene, and everyone starts knowing about you.
Hmm.
You know, which is really cool. I mean, word of mouth. That's the coolest thing about our industry is for every event that you do, we're not selling like send out cards. That's a hard thing to do because it's not a specific thing. People are in the audience to everything that you do, and they witness what you do, and they go, "Oh, I want you to do that for my party," you know.
Hmm.
And you're carving out an industry. So, for instance, my first industry were weddings because that's what people were booking. Then I was doing nightclubs, and then even with the bar mitzvahs, all of a sudden people were saying, "Hey, that was such a fun kids party. Let's do that for my 40th birthday." You know,
Sure.
the adults were booking us. You know,
So
so
in '82, you went to Total Entertainment. That's when you started
yeah,
that.
yeah.
How large of a company did you build up during that particular time?
Well, we had I had teamed up with somebody that was in radio. His name was Al Arneson, and he wanted to book one show, and I said, "Well, if we can book one show, let's book 3." And we started having fights about that because he'd call me up every day and said, "Oh, I turned down 2 shows today," and then he'd call me the next day and he'd go, "Oh, I turned down another show today," and I'm thinking, well, we're in the business to please people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not that we're trying to scam somebody, but I thought if I can book 5 shows, let's book 5 events. And I had a pipeline of people that I knew who DJ'd through high school and at Roller Garden. Some of them that you probably would even know, like Bill Herman
Hmm.
was one of my earliest people that worked with me. And we were booking 5 events consistently,
Nice.
and my partner and I we parted ways. He finally said, I don't feel comfortable booking more than 3 events or 2 events an evening, and I think you're getting greedy. Um, and quite honestly, it worked out well for us. And what I find is if you turn somebody down, they normally don't come back.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Especially if
So
it's a potential repeat customer, which many of the clients you've worked with over the years have been repeat customers,
right,
or people who are very well connected, which is just as good as a
exactly,
repeat customer, because that's been a big
right,
part of
right.
your business model.
Well, and it helps too because it's the type of thing where not as many people were doing this back in '82. Um, Although, as I said before, when we were booking shows, we had to explain why you'd want to book a DJ. That was the first paragraph
Yeah.
on my brochure is why you would book a DJ over a band,
Yeah, I remember those days. Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
So, but the proof is in the pudding. To me, it's about energy. Uh, so many things with live performances, the bands just weren't cooking. It's like they had so much space in between tunes and whatever. And I kind of developed a whole style. And not everyone liked it, but it's like 90% of the people that kind of witnessed what I did enjoyed it. I cut tunes off. I will easily play something for 2 minutes and move on to something else. And what I find is I'd like to put as many songs as possible in the amount of time that I have. And I can move them up and down and get them more excited and even more excited, So it was addicting because, I never thought I was going to be a DJ for more than maybe a couple years. I thought, okay, I'll do this to work my way through college because advertising was going to be my career. And that's probably the biggest surprise. I'm going to give the secret. I'm 61 years old with a baby face. And I never thought that I'd be doing 3 generations of parties for families.
Is that something that when a person gets to that point
No,
of,
I mean,
it's
my
like,
Lord.
I remember when you were the flower girl at a wedding, and now your daughter is getting married, not your daughter. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
You're doing somebody's wedding, and then you're doing the kid's bar mitzvah, and then you're doing their wedding, the kid's wedding. It's like incredible.
So you moved to kids dance and you started that. What kind of a different? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about that, but let's dig into that a little bit more. When you made that transition to more of a kid friendly, did you change your kind of marketing or your outreach to get shows when you made that transition?
Well, Total Entertainment was kind of a brand already. I'd been doing it for about 10 years. By doing kids dance, I was trying to give kind of an alternative thing to do, and I saw that that's where most of the business was. It seems like most of the DJ work is for schools, and I mean, just look at the numbers. The cool thing about it too is if you open up even a phone book back then, exactly where the schools are. You know how to market them. It's not as to do like wedding pages back then, before it was called the Knot. You didn't necessarily know where the brides were, so I wanted to market these companies. So marketing was the first thing, essentially, and then secondly, it's about doing like a 2-hour or 1-hour setup where I'm going in with no lights. We just go in and you just blast them, boom, 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 and you're out.
Yep.
And it's very likely doing 1 or 2 or 3 events, even sometimes in the summer myself or my guys. The other thing is programming. You can program in it. So we were running it almost like it sounded like a radio station. So we'd have sweeps, we'd have jingles, we have intros to songs, and then you can have the kid who's 17-year-olds with the voice say, "Hi, everybody," but it's like it still sounded polished. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I mean that's what we were working at. We were trying to get that kind of sound, and before you know it, we're hooking up with all the radio stations. We were doing KDWB for a number of years. We did KQRS. We did Cool 108. These are all the local stations from the
Yeah,
adult
some of the big
contemporary to
ones.
the
Yeah.
oldies stations. But what I found was they, it seems like when you work with somebody, they're very fickle. And so you're doing something, or even for clubs, it seems like there's a kind of a short-lived thing in this industry. So I thought, something. If I'm going to promote something, I'm going to promote something called Kids Dance, and once I get that idea in everyone's head, it's almost like Kleenex. Where people are like almost steal that name, and I have to call them every once in a while, or send a lawyer and say, listen, you can't call it Kids Dance.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a copyrighted
but
term.
so it's marketing, it's energy, it's probably not as with Total Entertainment, we're trying to get big screens, we're trying to get lasers, we're trying to get really awesome effects that are kind of jaw dropping. With Kids Dance, it's almost just a DJ. Sometimes it's a dancer that goes out and spins on his head. But that's kind of a new development. That's maybe 15 years old, where we're bringing out break dancers and stuff. But it's just high energy. It's 2 minutes a song, no more.
And those shows you've been doing now, excuse me, you mentioned the 3 or 4 a day is how you've been doing that?
Before COVID, we were doing over 700 events a year. We were doing it in try to have some affiliates as well, but in the Twin Cities, over 700 events a year. And we were doing. See, when you're doing the small events, it gets you really good where you practice, and there's not as much stress where you're doing for a small group. But we were doing, Valley Fair, the Minnesota State Fair, Viking stuff for the Minnesota Vikings. I did Super Bowl Live, Super Bowl 52, Nicollet Mall. We did the All-Star Game for Major League Baseball.
You've been at numerous
it's the
Twins
type of
games.
thing where people notice what you do, and that's cool.
So what as you've been in this a few years, what drives you today? What is that motivating factor that makes you kind of fulfilled?
Humility. It's so funny because it's like I don't normally brag about my talents or whatever, because it's like you're only as good as your last show. And so I like the challenge. But I really enjoy watching the kids go nuts. And especially now, they've been cooped up for 15 months or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're responding better than ever to what we're doing. And so I take great joy on it. My daughters aren't providing grandkids yet. So I kind of adopt the kids on the dance floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Excellent.
I have a quick funny story. So
yeah, please do.
I did an event in the city of Minneapolis, and I hand out these prizes. They're nothing really special. Maybe they're $1 a piece at the most. And I remember setting up at a park, and some kid had some rose-colored glasses. And I said, "Oh, I see that you won something already." And he goes, another kid goes, "Oh no, that's his trademark." He goes, "You were here last year. This kid wears those glasses every day because he thinks they're so cool.
They're his thing."
You know what I mean? You don't realize what effect you have on people, where they come up and they say, because of you, I started taking dance classes and whatever. It's just amazing. And it's a whole different perspective coming after 4 decades of doing it, almost 5 decades, really. And you don't think about that, I mean, it's like nobody ever goes into it going, you go into it because it's fun, and it's still fun. If it's not fun anymore, I don't know if I'll do it, but I'd probably, Howard Wallach in Chicago says that he doesn't know anyone that works as many events as we do.
Yeah, you guys are busy.
And I have to make up for all the money that I missed during COVID, but I really enjoy it, and I'm not burnt on it. What I do is I set a date in the future, and I say, okay, after this date, I'm going to go on vacation, and I'm not looking back for a few weeks. But during that time, for October, we're probably doing 50 events now, probably over 50 for October. And unfortunately, with COVID, I'm running about a fourth of the staff I used to.
Sure.
So, which means I'm normally I had the guy who I would book. Chris is like my right hand man, and he goes, I can't do as many shows anymore for you. I'll do a few, but it's like I'm not gonna work every day like I was.
Mm-hmm.
So that means I'm going out. I haven't trained everybody. You're looking for a job in Minneapolis? Give me a call.
What I wanted to kind of hit a little bit on what do you do to relax? What is your downtime? You just mentioned, you block that time out, but where does Howard
Yeah.
go to recharge?
I have a place in Phoenix. I'm trailer trash, and I didn't go all during COVID, but I'll hang out, and I might fly out 3 or 4 times a year there. I also have a dog, a golden retriever dog that I try to walk every day, and I've got quite honestly, it's odd, but because my kids are grown up. I don't have the demands that you would normally have, like I had, decades ago when I had kids growing up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, so my downtime is a lot of business, which sounds odd, but it's passion, right? When you're doing it for yourself, it's passion.
And they say if it's something that you love doing, it doesn't seem to be, it's not that dredge of work. And I wonder if that's kind of an area where you found yourself.
Right, right. Well, and like I said, I like the challenge. It's almost like a puzzle. I'll tell you one of the newest problems that I had. So I have a client called Seaver's Fall Festival, and it's a corn maze. I noticed looking at other DJs across the country, some of them are doing corn mazes or the hay rides and whatever. So they had specific demand for me. First of all, they helped me during COVID because they were one of the few areas where they'd actually book me even during the height of COVID. And so that really saved my butt last year. But so they want like 3 30-minute shows. They don't want any more than 30 minutes and any less than 30 minutes. So the odd thing about it is obviously for a DJ, momentum is the DJ's best friend. You want to get everybody going and you're trying to whip him up into a frenzy. Well, in 30 minutes, I got a 5-minute lead time and then I've got to hit it.
Yeah.
So I figure out how to get kids on my dance floor in this huge, probably the size of 3 football fields, to come to my stage and dance. And we do it 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes each. And they just go nuts. If you want to see what kind of a sample, you can go on my Facebook page. It's kind of fun to watch them get whipped up.
Kids can be crazy at those events. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Howard, we're just about out of time. I wanted to kind of wrap up. You mentioned at the beginning that you learned from watching your father, who wasn't happy with some of the jobs he did, and what did your dad, when you basically got to that point where you're going to be, this is what I'm going to be doing, I'm doing the DJ thing. What was his thoughts on that? Because many times,
well, that was the great prime. My dad passed away in 1987, but 1997. He had witnessed what I did for a long enough time where he pulled me aside one day and he said, "I'm so proud of you that you were able to make a living at something that you love to do, because it was something I was never able to do." And I must say, before we close, I wanted to give a shout out. There are so many people in the industry that we take for granted. It's like once I started connecting with Mobile Beat and with your programs for the DJs, when I hooked up with people like Scott Favor and Todd Mitchum, it brought whole new view on the DJ world in terms of what to do. Yeah. And I highly recommend it. It's a type of thing where you don't know what you don't know until somebody teaches you something different.
For sure. Howard, we need to wrap up here because we have another one just coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, it was Howard Walstein with me tonight, and we'll be jumping back here in just a few minutes with our next Industry Spotlight. Howard, thanks for being on with me tonight.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.